Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I've been doing a lot more amateur photography lately and ran into a problem in search of a solution. It all started when I started bringing my R5C out to family events, small parties, stuff like this, and taking photos here and there. When I wanted to share those photos, I had to go through the process of connecting my R5C with my cell phone to upload the photos. Now the R5C does have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, so that's not really the issue. I was able to download the photos and upload them to somewhere like Google Drive or OneDrive. Here's where the first problem comes into play. You have to babysit both the camera and the phone while this process is going, and you're not able to take photos because you're uploading photos from the memory card on the camera to whatever device it is, be it a tablet or a phone. That wasn't the biggest of deals, and kind of got around that because usually this happens at the end of the party or the end of the function where I can upload all of these photos, share out the folder access to a family or friend. I then had the fortune of shooting as a second shooter, somewhat freelance shooter at a charity golf tournament. And by no means am I a professional photographer, but I know enough of them to know some, tricks of the trade. Made sure I had my lenses ready, made sure my bag was pretty much stocked. I had my battery bank, extra batteries, extra memory cards, the whole lot. So the day of the tournament arrives and the gentleman there decides that he wants to print 5x7s on the fly as little souvenirs throughout the day. No problem. I have multiple memory cards, remember, most of which are V90s. So I'm ready. We're taking pictures and swapping memory cards, not the biggest of deals. All of my photos are being stored as a repository to the CF Express card that's really just an M.2 hard drive that I adapted. So I have, a full catalog of every picture taken between the different SD cards. The problem arises as the day continues and we're trying to keep track of which photos are taken. The printer won't take a CF Express card, of course, because it's not, I don't think there is a printer that exists that will do that. And we're trying to go back through 4 or 5 memory cards, trying to figure out where we left off. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, man, it would be nice if the NAR box still existed in some form or fashion that was useful. Because then, we could just upload everything to this one device and, clear out the cards as we go. And then just, swap that out instead of the cards or do something in some form or fashion like that. Even, do a sync on the fly as we swap out the memory cards. That way we keep one card in the camera at all times. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, that would be a great project. But the problem is then all of the ands started kicking in. All of the wants. It would be nice if, it had a screen and if it could connect to the cloud. And if, now I'm thinking about a Raspberry Pi or something like that, and battery. And it was just and after and after and. And I was like, this project, may get delayed because it's going to take me some time to put the thought into it that needs to go into it. Well, all of a sudden, a new player entered the ring. Enter the Tainer by CloudZen. This thing basically promises to do pretty much everything the Narbox did and then some. Let's go over some of the features real quick. You can add your own SSD. You can back up to your favorite cloud site. It can read CF Express Type B cards as well as SSDs. You can hook up to an external reader for card types not supported. It has a built-in battery, a USB Type-C 3.2 port, and a gigabit Ethernet port. It also has a built-in 3200 milliamp hour battery and a 320 by 240 TFT color screen. So you can actually see video as well as photos on this. So that's already a plus over the Narbox. CloudZen claims that you can back up 1 terabyte on a single charge. So with all of those features, what's there not to love? Let's go ahead and crack this thing open and see if we can get this to function as reported on paper. Okay, so let's go ahead and unbox the Tainer. And while we're doing that, I guess I need to mention where I got this from and the cost. So I got the version without the SSD pre-installed. You can get one without an SSD for $445, or you can get the 2 TB version. Basically, I think it's just the same exact device with the 2 TB drive already installed for $625. So kind of your choice. For me, of course, being more of a DIY type of person, I picked the one without the hard drive. And basically, here's what you get. It's just a device and a cable, and then a few instructions on how the device works. So flipping it around to see some of the IO and buttons. See if we can get this in focus. One second. There we go. So you have a USB port, you have a compact flash express port, and your SSD port. And you have a little rubber cover for it. Then going to the side, you have this USB dongle, which I'm pretty sure is going to be for Wi-Fi, and an Ethernet port, especially since it's on the side with the Ethernet port. I would assume that's your hardwired and wireless options, so to speak. And then you have just this little rubber boot, just obviously to protect it from like drops and stuff. And then you have 2 flathead screws on each side. I'm pretty sure you take these out and you should be able to expose the battery and the SSD, the port for the SSD drive. So we'll go ahead and break these open now and just see what the inside looks like. I'll probably have to find a SATA M.2 2280 size drive somewhere around. I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere. And then pretty sure this just slides off with a little bit of effort. There we go. And of course it has the little small TFT screen, and here's the battery on the back. So you just would take this battery out, and yep, right under here you have your M.2 expansion slot for a hard drive. So we'll just put this back on, and let me see if I can find a drive real quick to slap in here so we can do some additional testing. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, you have to use a SATA SSD, M.2 2280 size SSD, not to be confused with an NVMe SSD. An NVMe SSD will not work. So I did a bit of poking around and I came up with this. And it is in fact a SATA SSD. So while we're doing this, in the Tainer, you can go as high as a 32 terabyte SSD based on what B&H has in the description on the website. So in my opinion, it's still more beneficial to get the version that doesn't come with an SSD, because you can put your own. And SATA SSDs aren't that expensive, so it may be more beneficial to get your own SSD and install it. It's really not that difficult at all. You just install it, and then from there, I'm pretty sure we'll have to format the drive. And we just put this retainer screw back in the drive. And then as far as the size, make sure it's like the description says, a 2280, which is the size of the drive as far as length. So we're just going to put this screw back in, and we're going to put this battery back in. Sorry about the autofocus. Lens is all over the place today. But I mean, it's pretty much taking it apart in reverse. You just snap the battery back in. And I do like the fact that this is like a self-service type of device. So you could, in theory, get another battery and replace it. And I'm pretty sure this is a more common sized battery. So you may even be able to get a larger capacity battery as long as it fits in the same size slot. And then we just put these flathead screws back in, that the retainer screws for the actual clip. And then we're pretty much ready to power it on from here once we get this last screw in. And of course, put the rubber boot back on just for protection. And that is it. And of course, as soon as it powers on, the first thing it asks is if we want to format the drive that's been installed. You have your little scroll wheel on the side. And if you look at the bottom, you see the instruction says S for OK and L for back. So that's going to be a short press and a long press. Right now, it's just asking you to label the drive. So basically, you're just naming it, and then just go through those prompts. You can do anything from 0 to 99 as far as the name. It will erase the drive and then reformat it in the format needed to use it with the Tainer. And those numbers, I'm pretty sure, or I thought was the percentage, but it looks like it's not. So now we can see that the drive is ready to go. We have a couple of different options here. We have our USB dongle here. I'm pretty sure if we pop this in the side, it's going to pull up the Wi-Fi options. And just as I thought, it detects it as a Wi-Fi connection and gives us the options for the available Wi-Fi networks to connect to. And then if we back out of this menu, it tells us to remove the device since we canceled trying to connect to the Wi-Fi. Then you have the different menu options here, like turning off the beeps, going into the settings, connecting an external SSD, connecting to the cloud. And then we're just going to go into the settings just to see what's available here. So you have power saving, photo format, language, and then the option to okay, so now that we have the basics out of the way, I want to go ahead and do a couple tests. The first thing we're going to try is just to copy data from the SD card that's in my R5C to the hard drive that's in the Tainer. Because I think that's going to be one of the more basic functions that's going to allow us the most flexibility, especially in the scenario I described earlier where you may be swapping cards or even grabbing a card from a second shooter just to get their photos. More so like if you're into wedding photography or something like that in that scenario. And as you can see here, the first menu option that comes up is the SSD. And then we can connect it to the cloud service or an external SSD. But we're going to go ahead and go with the SSD to the built-in drive. And you're just using the jog wheel on the side, of course. So when you do the short press, it asks you if you want to copy it or copy and verify. We're going to do the copy and verify. If you don't do anything, it starts automatically within a few seconds based on the option that's highlighted. And so now we'll go ahead and let this marinate, so to speak, and see about how long it takes. And then we will go from there. So in the bottom right, you can actually see the estimated time, just like you would on a computer. And then in the very bottom left, it shows you how much elapsed time has transpired. You can see how many files it's copied right under the icon that looks like a SD card. And below that, it shows you how much of that is data. So it looks like I have about 87 gigs worth of photos and video on this card. Again, this is showing actually both photos and video. It's copying everything from the card to the SSD. And below the, like I said, below the count of images and video is the size. So here you have the one of the two included as USB ports that you can actually hook up an external drive to. And then on the side is where you have the USB cloud port and the Ethernet port. And then right here, you have the only USB Type-C port, which is for power and for connecting it to the computer. So it looks like we still have about 11 minutes of transfer time to go. So we'll just go ahead and let this roll and see how long it takes. All right, so as usual, we're gonna go ahead and kick this into super speed and see what we are looking at for time. And since we did the copy and verify, once it finished copying all of the data, it then has to go through the verify process, which admittedly may be a little bit slower than the copy process. So keep that in mind if you plan to do a copy and verify. But if it's, critical data, you may want to do that. But with this device, there are also other options for backing up at the same time as well. All right, so it looks like the copy and verify process took about 16 minutes for the 80 gigs, which is a little long, but if you're doing this professionally, you want to make sure you have the backups. Okay, so for the sake of the length of this video, I decided to cut out a bit of detail. So let me know if you guys want me to go in depth a little bit more, and I'll do a part 2 to this video. But here's just a quick example of setting up the Clouder app, which is CloudZen's own native app. There are a couple of quirks like making sure you have USB tethering on for the network portion. But other than that, it works pretty much like using the R5C with the phone, where you can access files directly and upload them to wherever you want. Here's an example of how the interface looks when you have both the CF Express and SD card installed. So from here, you can select to export both cards at the same time to the internal hard drive, to your cloud sources, or wherever else you have connected to here, like an external SSD. And as you go through the menu, you'll notice you can do both drives or one at a time. So the only other thing I wanted to cover briefly about the Tainer were the preview photos and videos option. So once you copy everything to the Tainer, you can actually pull up photos and even in the CR3 RAW format, as well as videos in the H.265 format. Although both do take a while to actually load and play, and that's probably due to the limited processing power on this small device. But the fact that it can even do that, to me, is extremely impressive, especially if you're out in the field and you just want to get a quick dirty view of how the video came out or just the composition of the pictures. That way if you have to retake something after you've copied it, or can start to look at what pictures you actually want to keep or delete. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys liked and learned something. As always, if you did, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notifications anytime I post new content like this. See you guys on the next one. Later.